Hi, Kevin here. I want to take a look at a simple little class here that demos some of the things we've been talking about in terms of class attributes, methods, and properties that will actually have methods that will access those attributes for you. So I'm just going to slide this over right here. This is the best way to start. So I've got this simple little payroll class here based on what we did in the abstraction video. The payroll class where we're going to calculate employee pay based on an employee's hours and their pay rate. And we're also going to take a look at the number of employees, total payroll, and total overtime hours in terms of shared attributes that would be shared amongst all objects that are instantiated of this class. Keeping in mind that the data within the class we want to hold private within the class so that we can control access directly. The only way to access all of these, all being declared as private, is through their specific property procedures. So I take a look down here. I've got a property called hours. That's actually the property, and I've declared it as friend, so it's accessible from anywhere in this assembly. So in other words, the presentation tier is actually this payroll form here. This guy can actually access my payroll class because it's all within the same assembly. So I've got, in terms of the property, I've got the get, which will return the value held in that private variable, and I've got my set. Set takes a single argument, what we pass to this property, and then of course there's a little bit of logic written in here in terms of validation. We'll get into validation. Specifically, we'll take a look at this line down here, this application exception, in a future video. There's an example of a property procedure for hours. That's individual employee hours. The other thing, if we take a look, so there's hours, rate, and employee pay, and I have property procedures for each one of those. There's hours, there's rate, and then there's pay. Something different about pay, though, we actually calculate pay. So based on the number of hours the employee works at a certain rate, really in terms of what we allow access to from this class is the value of the calculated employee pay. And if you remember from our chart of what we gleaned through the abstraction exercise, we needed a method to calculate pay. So I go up here, I've got area of my code, class methods, and I have this find pay method. And this is where we actually access employee hours. We test it, in terms of, is it just regular hours? So regular pay, overtime is 0. If it's beyond regular hours, then we calculate regular pay plus overtime pay. And then we've got this little bit of logic here that actually handles all the summary data for those 3 shared variables shared amongst all instances of this class: total overtime hours, total payroll, and number of employees. So pay itself, all that ends up doing is holding the calculated pay as determined by the find pay method. So as far as access to it, we're not going to let any component of this assembly outside of this class directly write to pay, but we do want to read pay. So this ends up being what's called a read-only property. And we declare it as read-only property. Its name is pay. And as read-only, it only has the get component. It does not have the get and set. And then, of course, I've got those 3 shared attributes. Well, they, of course, need shared properties to allow access to them. So I've got my read-only property for total pay, read-only property for overtime hours, and number processed. These are also all read-only because there's never going to be a case of an external class directly writing to these. These are all calculated and determined from within this class. All we need access for is what the current state or what the current value in those 3 variables might be. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at writing a constructor so that you can actually instantiate, and we'll look at actually creating objects.